Good morning. So the live stream has begun. So come on in and have a seat. We're a very small group this morning for a couple of reasons. The main one is that the worship service got moved up to 7:30 this morning. And so we also have several of our students who are participating in the worship service. And so for those of you who have managed to make it today for the brief 30-minute live stream of this session, I really am very grateful to you. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Oh, gracious God, as we gather today for this incredibly important work, we ask that you be in our hearts, in our minds, in our words, in our hugs, in all of our relationships that we are discovering and forming through the body of seminary students who have come today for this event. Take our anxiety off our shoulders. Be among us, give us peace, and remind us always in the midst of this that you are a God of love who has taught us this love through Jesus Christ. It's in his name we pray. Amen. So folks will be coming in from the back, and that's great. Help yourself to a seat. And know that we will adjourn right at 7:30. So you'll have to move quickly to where it is that you want to sit for the service. So I've got, just for the people who are watching from the live stream, I just want to share with you a few things. First, yesterday we had a pretty extraordinary session with bishops and the General Secretary of the General Board of Higher Ed and Ministry, Kim Cape. That session lasted for 2 hours, and we had an opportunity to hear about the Commission on the Way Forward from Bishop Sandra Steiner-Ball and Dr. Tom Berlin, to hear about the Global Church from Bishop Yemba, to hear from Bishop Bickerton about the organization of the General Conference, and to ask questions of these leaders of our church. We had over 150 people in this space. There was standing room only. And I think for those of you who are tuning in, it's just important for you to know that there are seminary students from the official seminaries of the United Methodist Church, and then from others who are really important and wonderful schools here. I think I counted up to 15 different seminaries who were here for that session. And so one of the purposes of this time together each morning at 7 a.m. is going to be to help seminary students from different schools meet each other, build relationships, help them get to know and understand their contexts and their worlds, and to help build a network of seminary students across the country and across the world. So this is a very important time that has grown out of actually the 2012 General Conference. This is when we started this activity at our General Conferences, and it's just been wonderful to see how it continues to build. So there are three main things I want to speak to this morning. The first is the Judicial Council rulings that took place last night. And for those of you who are on live stream, you can go on the website and download the DCA and see in greater detail what we're talking about. I also want to talk about what's going to happen today. The two main items on the agenda are the election of the Executive Committee for the Legislative Committee, and also the prioritization of the petitions, the subject matter that's going to be handled by the Legislative Committee. So first, let's talk about the Judicial Council rulings that took place yesterday. Among several that were not directly related to this event, there were two. And if you have an ADCA, you will see a list of all of the petitions that were submitted in addition to the plans that were submitted by the Commission on a Way Forward by way of the Council of Bishops. There were about 50 petitions that were reviewed by the Committee on Reference about a month ago. And of those, 21 were deemed not in harmony with the purpose of this particular General Conference. So they were eliminated from consideration. But last night, the Judicial Council ruled on 2 more. And so I'm just going to lift up the details of this. The first one is petition 90052. You'll find it on page 197 of your DCA. And this is a petition that was submitted to enforce enhancement of punitive approaches to persons who participate in weddings and in weddings primarily, or who come out as LGBTQ. The second one is 90078, and it's on page 211 of your ADCA. And this is a petition that was submitted to create a global episcopacy committee that would handle the review of complaints against bishops. So both of these were thrown out as not constitutional by the Judicial Council. So they will not be before the body this session of the General Conference. Now the second subject I just want to lift up for everybody today has to do with the election of the officers for the Legislative Committee. Very, very different from a regular General Conference is the reality that we have a Legislative Committee of the whole, which is that all 864 delegates will participate in the same Legislative Committee. This is my 6th General Conference, and I've never seen this happen before. And so this is going to be new to all of us as we observe throughout the day. But there will be an election of officers, and in your Daily Christian Advocate that was printed yesterday that you can download, there are reviews of the candidates who are eligible for election. Now there are very specific criteria for this special called General Conference. Because we are the same delegation for the most part as came in 2016, one of the ways in which the Commission on the General Conference sought to shorten the time for this conference was to draw from people who had already chaired legislative committees in 2016. So each of the people who are coming before the body for election have done this work before. And that's a very important thing to be aware of. There are no new committee chairs, vice chairs, or secretaries. Nobody's green. Nobody's starting off brand new. You can go to those pages and read the descriptions of the people who are eligible for election. That'll take place probably about mid-morning, late morning, early afternoon. Early afternoon? Okay, I've got a great resource sitting here in the front row. The elections will take place in early afternoon. The other thing that's going to happen today is the prioritization of the petitions and plans. Now this is something we've only heard about from Bishop Bickerton yesterday, and quite honestly, we're not quite sure how this is going to happen. But the approach is intended to help the Legislative Committee create a system by which they will actually address the petitions. So those that will be evaluated as having a higher priority will also be the ones that the Legislative Committee addresses first. So this is going to be an interesting thing for us to observe because I'm not even sure this has happened in our regular legislative committees in the past. So for those of you who are watching live stream and for those of us who are gathered here together, it's just really important to know that kind of day by day, this is going to be a different experience than what we would call a regular session of the General Conference. Okay, so I just want to lift that up. Can somebody give me a sense of the time? 7:12, okay. So the live stream goes off like right at just before 7:30, and then it's going to shift over to the worship service. At this point, we've got time for questions or conversation, organization among you all. Does anybody have a question you want to lead with? Okay, so Genova.
So with the prioritization vote that's coming in the early afternoon, that's going to be tabulated and then start today, or it's going to affect what's going on tomorrow?
I think we'll discover the order of priority either this afternoon or early in the morning. That'll be made public. So whatever happens with the prioritization process will dictate the management of the meeting tomorrow.
And is there allowance for getting through everything by the end of Tuesday? Like, is there a clause somewhere that says we cannot leave until this is done?
Well, in 2016, the rule of the General Conference was changed because for several General Conferences prior to 2016 and including 2016, if a petition died in the legislative committee, it certainly wasn't brought forth to the plenary. But if we ran out of time before petitions were handled in the plenary, they died on the floor. That rule got changed in 2016. So somehow or another, whether it is to not take any action or to take some kind of action, all of the business should be concluded by Tuesday. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
In the prioritization of the material that will be handled, do we have any idea when all those votes are tabulated, what the legislative committee will do? How will they decipher what those votes mean? Is it the most votes for one is definitely first, or is there something else?
Yeah, so the prioritization, those that are priority one, well, they'll be the ones that are taken first. The priority two ones will be taken later on in the process. How they're going to tabulate the votes, that's the decision of the executive committee for the legislative committee. So that's the important reason why the officers of the legislative committee are elected first, because they basically take on the organization of the whole legislative committee itself.
So if one piece of legislation gets 700 votes and another one gets 699, the 700 vote one will go first. It's
Yes.
simple numerical.
That's my understanding, that it's simple numerical tabulation. I'm so glad you're sitting there.
So the way
Why
that...
don't you, Carlene, why don't you stand?
Okay, great. Hi. The way that we're actually going to be...
Identify yourself.
Oh, I'm Carlene Fogelmiller. I'm a delegate from Florida. I'm also one of the nominees for secretary for the executive committee. The way we're actually prioritizing first and then electing officers this afternoon because the prioritization has to come from the plenary body. And once we elect the officers, if there's time, we'll be moving directly into a legislative committee setting. So the way that we have been trained, because all of the nominees have been retrained, is that we are going to do it simply numerical value. However, there's really only two options, and it's not a vote per se, it's a rank. And so we're just going to say this is the highest ranked priority. So if we have like a petition, like the West Path petitions, for example, that have, 85% that say this is a high priority, and the next highest priority is, the whatever plan with 75%, will go in that order. And so we're simply going percentage of highest priority ranking. So highest priority, next highest, so on and so forth, all the way down the list of petitions. We will be acting on every petition. Acting on a petition could simply mean that we have someone tried to substitute a plan or a petition for another one that fails. That counts as acting. We've taken a vote on it. At the end, if we're running out of time, we could take a vote and say we're not going to support these petitions. That's a vote. It counts. We've acted on it. We're going to do our best to get to everything in a way that honors the process and honors the people who have put things forward. And also, we literally have to vote on everything, so we will probably just take a blanket, no, that's not going to happen kind of vote towards the end. So
I'm so glad she's here. She went through the training. None of the rest of us did. That's great. And she's got to go to the floor. Any other questions? Well, what I'd like to do next is to give you all time to greet each other. For those of you live streaming, this is going to not mean much to you at all. But we've got some phenomenal students here from all across the country, and they need some time to just say hello and to greet each other, because we didn't get to do that yesterday in our meeting. This is a really important and new dynamic that we're adding to these sessions at General Conference, because we really want you to realize that you are not alone in your space, that you are all across the country, all preparing in very similar ways for a similar work, and we care about you. We care a lot about you. So we're going to mill around and greet each other for the next about 5-ish minutes, and then we're going to head on over to get our seats for the worship service. Okay?
That's a good way to go.